Hello, this is Good Morning Transfers. We're into the final 10 days of the window. Things are starting to get busy. Shock news over the weekend as Bayern Munich approached Newcastle over the signing of Kieran Trippier. Phillips' future could be resolved as West Ham enter talks with Manchester City over a loan move. We'll be debating all of those topics and reflect back on historic transfers that happened on this day. And there are some crackers. So here's what you can look forward to today. First is the latest from Newcastle, including news on striker Callum Wilson. 9:15 we'll have the latest from West Ham. And at 9:30, the latest on Emile Smith-Rowe's future at Arsenal. Much more as well. Very good morning to Flex, to Harriet Pryor and to Nabeed Haroon. We are going to start with Newcastle. We're interested to hear what the Newcastle fans think of this transfer news. Hashtag transfer talk on X, because they've rejected an approach from Bayern Munich for Kieran Trippier. Bayern are offering a loan with an obligation to buy or potentially a permanent deal this month, and Trippier is open to the move. But we understand Newcastle have no interest in losing their first choice right back, and of course often wears the captain's armband as well. Right, Nabeed, with Trippier, surely Newcastle can't let him go.
I don't think they can let him go in the sense that they need Trippier. He's one of their best players. He's been a little inconsistent this season. I think most people would agree. They do have other options. Tino Livramento, obviously, he's played him at left-back quite a few times. I think actually left-back's an area where they've got quite a few options as well. They've got Lewis Hall, Dan Burn in there. Matt Target's currently injured. So Livramento playing at right-back isn't the worst idea in the world. They also have Emile Kraft. Although he's not played many games, 32 starts since 2020. The only thing is there's a massive profile change. You have Trippier, who's like this sort of like, almost at times, a deep creator for him, whereas Tino Livramento is a traditional fullback, wants to get round the wing and put balls into the box. But there's a lot of talk about Trippier being a leader in the dressing room. Often when things happen on the pitch, the one Newcastle player that's always involved is Kieran Trippier. So I do wonder whether out of the bunch of players that they may have to let go of because of the financial rules, whether Trippier would be the first one to go to.
Yeah, Flex, I don't... With this news, we weren't expecting it. It came out of nowhere. Bayern Munich are quite meticulous when it comes to their transfer policy. Does it look like they've been given some encouragement?
Yeah, it does seem that, which I'm quite surprised by. I mean, we spoke about this sort of last week, and the panel at that point sort of said, can't see that happening. You know, he's too instrumental to Newcastle, like Nabeed just spoke about as well. But for Bayern Munich to still be at the table and for the reports to suggest that Kieran could be interested in a move, you maybe think, why? I mean, maybe he could see, you know, Tino Livramento coming through, and a natural progression for him would be to move on. He's experienced, a chance for him to play in another league, win more silverware. We saw that Kieran Trippier is definitely not, you know, afraid of moving abroad. He did it at Atletico Madrid and won the league there. He could be sort of saying a similar situation at Bayern Munich to go and you know, win potentially more silverware at this time of his career. And actually, if he was to look at his career from sort of Burnley onwards, to go to Atletico Madrid, from Spurs to Atletico Madrid, win, get into Newcastle, help them to get to the position that they've been in, then go on to sort of Bayern Munich, then win trophies. He could be looking at that as really attractive. So I'm still a bit puzzled by it, because I still don't think it's the best decision for Newcastle to let him go. Very interested to see what Newcastle fans say. Like you said, encourage the Newcastle fans to get involved in this one. But definitely, I think Bayern Munich have been given some inkling that there could be an opening for the deal. Otherwise, they still wouldn't be at the table.
Yeah, Newcastle fans, what do you think about the potential of Kieran Trippier leaving this month? Hashtag transfer talk on X. And also Callum Wilson as well, who's rumoured to be wanted out in Spain. But Harriet, in terms of Trippier, how important is he to Newcastle?
Yeah, well, if you're having a look at some of the stats, and there's absolutely no surprise that Newcastle don't want to let him go in this window. He was the first signing, actually, under the new ownership when he joined the club in January 2020 for a fee of $12 million. And take you back to when he joined, Newcastle sat in the league 19th place, and they'd won just one game that season. So his influence was immediately felt, and he's been such a key figure for their rise up the Premier League table and, of course, in the Champions League after so many years. And if we look at his stats at Newcastle, the manager, Howe, has said he has been a transformative signing for us and has glued the team together. He has taken the group to a different level. He is at the heartbeat of that. And if you can look here, since he joined in the Premier League, 63 games, 3 goals. But the key ones are these ones down below: 34 assists, 171 chances created, 34 big chances created, and 203 successful crosses. So integral to Newcastle's style of play. And since the start of the 2022-23 season, he's rarely dropped out of the team. Started 27 Oh, that was the wrong stat, but he's started the majority of games in the league and then all 6 in the Champions League this season. 7 assists in 19 Premier League matches for Newcastle. Then if we have a look here, in the Premier League this season, this is ranking him in the Premier League, 7 assists, that's 3rd most in the Premier League. 2nd for chances created, 1st for crosses attempted, 2nd for touches, and 3rd for forward passes. And despite coming under pressure and attention for a dip in form recently, there is no denying that he's integral to Newcastle's style of play. And then, of course, if you look at the fact that he is 33, a senior figure in the dressing room, he brings a lot of intangible qualities like his leadership, as Debade mentioned, his professionalism. He's a real standard setter in the changing room since the moment he joined. If a move did materialise, he would, of course, link back up with former Tottenham teammates Eric Dyer and Harry Kane. There is, the high-profile mistakes that he has made, guys. But if you think about the fact that he is such a key figure, do you feel like it's time for him to have a change and maybe get away from the spotlight, or do you think that he should stay?
I think from Kieran Trippier's perspective, he gets to go to Bayern Munich and win trophies. I think that would probably be the icing on top of the cake for him as a footballer, because he had, as Flex mentioned there, when he went to Tottenham, he had a bit of a tough time. If you remember, he almost became a player that people would create internet memes around. Then he goes to Atletico, wins the league, comes to Newcastle. It's almost like a full circle remontada for him. And it feels like Bayern would be a great move for him personally. And also, he's 33. When are Newcastle going to cash in, if ever they are going to cash in?
Yeah, well, that's Kieran Trippier. There's also Callum Wilson. It's understood that Atletico Madrid had made an approach to get Callum Wilson on loan. That was rejected by Newcastle. So the Spanish club are now focusing their attention on a loan deal for Moise Kean, of course, from Juventus, who used to be at Everton. And Nabade, if you look at Newcastle's striking options, is it looking less likely that Callum Wilson would leave?
I would say this one would make a lot less sense, definitely. If Newcastle had a choice right now to let go of Trippier or Callum Wilson, you'd imagine, although Trippier is so important and integral to everything they do, if they let go of Callum Wilson, they only have Isak available. And then you only have one striker. Also, Isak's injury record isn't completely clean either. Potentially could play Gordon through the middle. Gordon was signed as a 3rd option as a striker with Harvey Barnes fit, but Harvey Barnes obviously injured as well. They have played Joe Linton out there a few times to play Gordon through the middle. But ultimately, I don't think if Newcastle's ambition is to get back in the Champions League, you can let go of Callum Wilson because he's guaranteed 10+ goals every single season.
Yeah, it's very key to stress that Newcastle do not want to lose Trippier or Wilson. Substantial offers for 2 players who are in their 30s, though, may prove too attractive to turn down, especially as it might allow them to dip back into the market and fix their issues, particularly in midfield. But, of course, if Wilson goes, though, Flex, they can't spend the money on midfield because they need to replace him up front.
They would. I think the first bit of that we understand Newcastle have sort of, no intention of selling these players. I think that will come to Newcastle fans' ears and be well received, because we've seen so much about what the CEO said about them potentially needing to sell some big players. They have got problems with PSR and they're frustrated. They've got these huge budget from the new investment that they've got, but they're not able to spend it because they need to fall within the PSR constraints, and they're managing to do that. But I think the alarming sounds was that for Newcastle fans, are we going to lose Alexander Isak? Are we going to lose Bruno Guimaraes? And I know that maybe Wilson and Kieran Trippier don't fall into the exact bracket as those two, but they're still big players. They're still big, key first-team players, especially Kieran Trippier. So for the club to come out and say first off the bat that we're not trying to sell these players, I think is good. But if Callum Wilson did leave, absolutely, because they would need a replacement. Because you look at Alexander Isak with some of the fitness injuries he's had, even though he's a fantastic player. Callum Wilson himself as well has had injury problems as well. So yes, if he leaves, they definitely need to replace him.
Well, let's get more on the potential Trippier move and go live to Germany and speak to our colleague Florian Plettenberg. Good morning to you, Florian. Just update us on where this potential move is right now.
Yeah, very difficult situation. Good morning, first of all, here from Munich. Yeah, he's still a target for FC Bayern Munich because there's still no breakthrough in terms of negotiations between FC Bayern and PSG, because the reason is that Bayern is pushing for an option to buy for Nordi Mukiele, and PSG, they want an obligation to buy. So at this stage, the deal with Mukiele is close to be off, and this is why Trippier is a hot candidate for FC Bayern right now. But you have to say that not every one of the bosses is convinced about Kieran Trippier at FC Bayern. He's 33 years old, for sure. He's very versatile. He's experienced, but he's not very cheap. And to our understanding, he has a salary of around 7 or 8 million gross per year if he would join FC Bayern Munich. And we hear that Newcastle demand around 13, 14 million euro per obligation to buy or per permanent deal. And the target, the aim of FC Bayern is not to spend so much money for Trippier. Nevertheless, I think that Trippier is the hottest option right now for FC Bayern Munich. And we have the clear information that there's a verbal agreement since Saturday morning, and the player is very, very keen to join FC Bayern Munich. And we also hear it very clearly that the deal is not off.
OK, so not off, and you've given us some great information there on Trippier. And, of course, you talked about Mukiele being another right-back option. You said that one's close to being off. Let's say Mukiele's off and Newcastle don't let Trippier go. Does Thomas Tuchel have any other options at right-back, or will he go all out for Trippier?
In that case, Thomas Tuchel will become more and more angry. The squad is absolutely too thin for the targets FC Bayern Munich has this season. So at this stage, we really speak about Mukiele and Trippier.
Right, OK, so they're his options right now. If we go into central midfield, let's discuss Pierre-Emile Hoijberg. His future is uncertain. Are we expecting him to leave Tottenham this month?
Absolutely. That's his target. He has played 90 minutes against Manchester United, but he is open to leave Tottenham in the next few days because, to our understanding, he wants to play regularly. He wants to be a regular starter, and it's very difficult under Postecoglou right now for him at Spurs. There is nothing close. There is nothing advanced, but we hear that Daniel Levy don't want to give him away via an option to buy. He wants to have an option with an obligation to buy or a permanent deal. Daniel Levy, he wants to see some money for Pierre-Emile Hoijberg.
And Manchester United, they may enter the market. Tell us about this interest in Brian Brobbey. Is that a deal that could happen?
It's not hot for the winter stage. Don't understand me wrong, please. Brian Brobbey was a topic which has been discussed internally and was an idea of Erik ten Hag because he admires the player. They had a very good collaboration when they worked together. It's not like there's advanced negotiations, and our clear understanding is that Brian Brobbey has to stay and wants to stay at Ajax now in winter. But this topic could become more and more hot for summer. We have also talked about Joshua Zirkzee. He's a very talented striker at Bologna. He's definitely on the list of Manchester United, but Brian Brobbey is a target for summer as well.
And finally, it looks like there's now going at Nottingham Forest. Orel Mangala, tell us about that move.
Yeah, he's frustrated. He's not very happy at Forest because he was also not a regular starter in the last couple of weeks under the new coach Santo. And there are definitely offers on the table. And in the last 48 hours, there has arrived a new offer from Napoli for him. It's about a loan with an obligation to buy, and the transfer fee package, loan fee and the obligation, is around 25 until 30 million euro. And we hear that Marinakis is open to let him go for a special price. I think if there will arrive a price around 35 or 40 million, then he will get the green light to join a club in Italy. Napoli is pushing a lot. There's also an offer from Juventus Turin. There's also an offer from Galatasaray Istanbul, but the player is keen to join a top club in Italy.
Florian, great to speak to you. Thank you. Yeah, a couple of people have been in touch talking about Kieran Trippier here. Ben says if Trippier wants to leave, show him the door. Amazing player, but we can't have players that are keen to move elsewhere, especially not our captain. I think Lascelles is officially club captain, but yes, when Trippier plays without Lascelles, he tends to wear the armband. William says Newcastle will no way let Kieran Trippier go unless the player wants to go. That's the key. He's a huge player for them and the first real signing that got them to where they are today. Who would replace him if he went? OK, keep your tweets coming in. Hashtag transfer talk. Still to come this morning, we'll take a look at the stories making the back pages, and we'll have the latest from West Ham. Will they sign Calvin Phillips? Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Time to bring you a few stories from the back pages. Let's start with The Sun. They're reporting that Tottenham have rejected a bid from a club in the Saudi Pro League, Al Nassr, for their defender Emerson Royal. The Daily Star say that Manchester United midfielder Casemiro is not in the club's long-term plans and he could be sold, but that would be in the summer. And finally, The Guardian are reporting that Aston Villa have rejected West Ham's offer to sign striker John Duran on loan with an option to buy. However, it's our understanding that West Ham have not made an approach for the player. Right, that rounds up some of the stories making the back pages today. Reminder, if you're out and about, you can keep across all of the latest deals and transfer stories. It's on our Transfer Centre blog. If you scan the QR code on your screen right now, it will take you there. You mentioned West Ham there. Let's talk about them because David Moyes was asked at the weekend whether the club will be active between now and the end of the window. This is what he had to say.
Well, I would never ever talk about MD, but we're always looking to add good players top players to the group of players we've got. Sometimes there isn't people in the positions you want that you can go and buy those positions. So we'll have a look at a lot of players. We are looking at a lot of players at the moment. Hopefully we will get some new additions, possibly. I always add the word possibly to it because there's a possible chance that we don't get them.
Now, you're a lot more optimistic than you were, let's say, last week or the week before?
No, optimistic is never the right word, because optimistic means that, I'll always think that we've got hope that we might get it if we can get good players, but it's not a case of one thing happening or not. It could change every hour, and we'll if we could add some players which will help us, I think we'll try to, but it's just not guaranteed.
We're going to talk West Ham with the panel in a moment, but we're actually going to go back to our colleague Florian Plettenberg, who joined us earlier, but he's got some fresh information. Florian, what can you tell us first of all about Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting?
Yeah, there were some hot rumours about possible interest from Manchester United, but we can say there is no concrete negotiations at this stage between the Red Devils and the management of Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. FC Bayern Munich is aware of the fact that Manchester United is monitoring Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, but FC Bayern Munich, they have no intention to let him go in the last days of the transfer window.
And the other one, we were due to talk about Joe Linton later on in the show with myself and the panel. What are you hearing about him?
Yeah, a fresh and a new information for you. We hear that he will undergo a groin surgery tomorrow in Barcelona, and he will be out maybe until the mid of April, until the end of April. And now there's a clear tendency that he won't extend his contract at Newcastle United beyond 2025. OK, all right, Florian, good information. Thank you. OK, so an update there on Joe Linton and Eric Choupo-Moting as well. But we were talking West Ham, weren't we? West Ham have been in discussions over a loan move for Calvin Phillips. So, Flex, if it's West Ham, and we know that he's wanted by many clubs, how much do West Ham need him?
Yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, actually, because a player like Calvin Phillips in his best form, which we haven't seen, obviously, since he's arrived at Manchester City, will be very useful to West Ham. I think they've obviously bought in Alvarez from Ajax. You look at what Ward-Prowse is doing in that midfield. Paquetá has been actually pushed out to the left because it's a bit packed in that midfield. Souček has been alongside Alvarez for large parts. And I think he could be a really welcome addition to David Moyes' side. Someone I think David Moyes would absolutely love to have in his side. Yes, Souček is playing quite well and chipping him a few goals here and there. But I think a midfield of Alvarez and Phillips, a lot more combative, a lot more mobile, and a lot more strings to its bow than the one with Souček in there. But just gives David Moyes another option, and for Calvin Phillips, a chance to reignite his career. Had a terrible time at Manchester City, picking up some really, really big honours that a lot of players would be so proud to finish their career and say they've won. But in the manner that Calvin Phillips has won them, with having not played much part in it, he definitely just needs to go where he's going to play. And I think that's what the discussion point is actually with that. Yes, we can look at Souček, Alvarez and Ward-Prowse and maybe some others if West Ham are going to be really ambitious in this window, and say, well, is he guaranteed to start? Because I think that is the biggest thing for Calvin Phillips now. Forget where the trophies are, forget necessarily about the aspirations of the club to some extent. Obviously he wants them to be ambitious in some form, but he has to play football. He's missed so much football. So I think that's the discussion point. How much will he start if he arrives there with Calvin, if Calvin Phillips goes there with Souček and Alvarez?
What do you think, Nabeed?
I agree with Flex. I think they'll struggle to fit him in, one, because he hasn't played for such a long time. So if you cast your mind back to Calvin Phillips at Leeds, that's a long way back. The player has now changed. He's played under Pep Guardiola. There will be side effects of that, as we've seen with Jack Grealish. So I wonder, does he go next to Edson Alvarez, and what do you do with James Ward-Prowse, who's probably West Ham's most creative midfielder? Do you then maybe shift your system to push him further on? I don't personally prefer Ward-Prowse in behind the striker. I prefer him a little deeper where he can see the full picture. Edson Alvarez has been unbelievable, so you can't take him out. And I think Souček's actually played very well. But one big factor to Souček's game that maybe Calvin Phillips doesn't have is his aerial quality is, I think, in the league, one of the best. And so I wonder, does Calvin Phillips go to West Ham and become a rotation player? I don't think he wants that.
No, look, and I don't want to undercut Calvin Phillips because, like you said, there are differences from him playing in that side at Leeds and now obviously being so inactive and pretty much training just every week with the top players that he has. There are going to be some side effects, I agree. But I'm going to push back a little bit when I think about it and say the best version of Calvin Phillips versus the Souček. If you take the aerial ability out, I do think that gives West Ham a different dynamic, quite an exciting one. But I'm just not sure, like you said, how much they would want to change that now. I'm not sure how.
It's funny as well because when you've listened to Pep Guardiola talking about Calvin Phillips, he's almost apologetic that he can't give him more game time, that he can't integrate him into that team. And I do think that speaks to the fact that he has got that level of professionalism. He is a standard setter in the changing room. I feel like he is a kind of leadership figure, and any club looking at Calvin Phillips will look back to his time at Leeds and see those qualities and recognise that and think not only on the pitch but off the pitch he'll add a lot to the dynamic. But like you mentioned, Flex, the key for him now is just going somewhere. He's going to play a lot of football. Will he get that game time necessarily week in, week out when everyone's available at West Ham? I'm not so sure. You feel like there's so many teams you could go to and get good opportunities, but I'm just not sure why nothing's quite materialised yet.
West Ham fans, but how excited would they be? Get in touch with the show because I think that'd be a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Do they think their midfield's quite settled and that would maybe unsettle it? Or would they be relishing the chance to get someone like Calvin Phillips through the door?
Yeah, West Ham fans, hashtag transfer talk. And also tell us about Danny Ings as well, because his future remains uncertain. David Moyes, though, claimed he does have a future at the club. Harriet, what is best for Ings this month?
Yeah, Ings is a really interesting one. If you listen to David Moyes talking about him, he said we bought Danny in when we were really short of centre-forward options and we wanted someone that could score in the Premier League. We wanted someone to hit the ground running. Now, those quotes kind of suggest to me that at the time he was exactly what they needed. He did come in, he scored 2 against Nottingham Forest. Since then, though, he has found it hard and struggled for game time. And again, Moyes suggested that because of the form of other players, he mentioned Antonio, he mentioned also using Jared Bowen in that position, Danny Ings hasn't been able to get the game time. But then you think to the game at the weekend, he was almost unplayable in that at times, wasn't he? He wins the penalty, he looks really sharp, he doesn't look like a player who hasn't got that level of match fitness. However, he is probably coming, to the latter stages of his career in terms of his age, the other side of 30 now. Sorry to anyone on the panel at the other side of 30, but that's just the reality, isn't it? So
don't say that to me.
Yeah, but I feel like there's so many teams in the Premier League we talk about who are looking for experienced strikers, someone who can come in and score goals, and you'd have to think he'd be a really good option for a lot of teams. He hasn't been at West Ham all that long. He, like I mentioned, did make an impact. That's tailed off. I don't know. David Moyes said it's up to Danny Ings, but is it up to Danny Ings if he's not getting the opportunities?
The one thing I would say about Danny Ings is almost everywhere he's gone, the moment he gets game time...
That's the thing, but he's not getting that game time,
He's not getting game time.
So they're saying it's up to him, but if he's not getting the opportunities to prove what he's capable of, is it really up to him? It's up to the players ahead of him, I guess, as well.
I mean, as you said, the Sheff United game, it felt like an audition.
Yeah.
He hasn't played in a while, and he was putting himself about, which he always does. I think his professionalism has been perfect everywhere he's gone. And like Harriet said there's a lot of Premier League sides that want strikers. They need goal scorers. The 3 sides down there need goals. So I wonder if they look to Danny Ings. If you remember, think back to his season at Southampton, he almost kept them up and actually made them into a side that a lot of people were sort of saying they're never going to go down because of how good he was, and then obviously he left.
I wonder whether the question mark is he capable now of being that out-and-out striker, or is he someone that needs to play more as part of a front 3 or link up with other players? Do you think he's still got that ability to be the out-and-out number 9 for a team?
I think he's got the quality as a footballer in general to play within a front 3 or a front 2. I think typically at Southampton he played in a 2 alongside Che Adams, who did a lot of the running for him. On the weekend he played in behind Jared Bowen as like a false 9/10. So I think he's actually got the quality as a footballer to play in whichever formation or system required. Fitness is obviously a problem, and he hasn't had a great injury record over the last 3 or 4 years. But as I say, you need 10 games out of Danny Ings. And if you're down there, you're Luton, you're Burnley, Sheffield United, other sides down there, you just get 10 games straight out of this man. He will score goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he used to play for Liverpool, though, doesn't he? That probably doesn't help. But what have they done so far, West Ham, in this window?
Connor Coventry, the youngster out of the academy, has made a permanent switch to Charlton. So they've made a little bit of money on him. The most notable in terms of the first team is Thilo Kehrer has gone to Monaco on loan. He came in from PSG, didn't quite work out for him. But at least question marks over Aguerd, at least question marks over Ben Rama, Maxwell Cornet, who obviously scored against Sheffield United. In terms of their availability, Ben Rama has been attracting some interest from Lyon. I think it just depends on who they can get in and who they can move on. So some balancing acts to happen at West Ham, but I think very dependent on if they have to go big, or maybe it's a loan with an option to buy, or they maybe go in big and buy the likes of Calvin Phillips. Also talks about them going in for other strikers as well. So depending on who they shift out and get in, I think we're going to see a little bit of a balancing act at West Ham.
Breaking news away from transfers, it's away from football. It comes from the Australian Open tennis, because Great Britain's Cameron Norrie has unfortunately been knocked out. He's been beaten in 5 sets. It was a thriller against Alexander Zverev. Zverev goes through, and unfortunately Norrie is out of the Australian Open. Back to transfers and to Bournemouth. Head coach Andoni Iraola said injuries to the defence may force the club's hand in the final days of the January transfer window.
We were already really thin with the fullbacks. Almost all the injuries we have are in this position, and you never know what injuries, but especially with Adam Smith out, with Milos Clark out, with Lloyd Kelly, we kind of had him for some minutes. We couldn't put him for more, and now we have to think, because we have another cup game now close, and we will have to see who is available, and especially we're going to be thin in this defensive side.
Does that mean you might need to do something in January, even if it's just something short term, get a body or two in?
Yeah, probably we'll need some new player, because I think we are thin right now. But I don't know what's going to happen. There's still a lot of days in the market, but it's true that especially in these positions we are right now very thin.
Loads on the way. We've got news from Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal. Will Emile Smith-Rowe be leaving the club this month? It's 5 in 5, 5 teams, 5 minutes, self-explanatory. Starting now, Flex, Fulham.
Yes, I've got to say definitely a striker for them, especially if Rodrigo Muniz is going to leave. They're in the market potentially for a striker. There has been links, obviously, with Armando Broja. We've spoken about that here on Good Morning Transfers and other transfer shows here at Sky, at the fact that Chelsea are making him available. Obviously, a problem with PSR. A lot of clubs needing to navigate around certain situations. They did it with Lewis Hall, Chelsea, sort of alone with an obligation to buy later on. Could that be a potential incoming for Fulham? And also Trevor Chalobah as well has been noted as, or linked, should I say, as getting a loan move until the end of the season there. A bit of a favour, coming back from a hamstring injury as well. Final game time tough to get back into Pochettino's side, and a whole plethora of centre-halves ahead of him. And Levi Colwill currently playing out of position, and you think if they get Cucurella back, they get Ben Chilwell back, they get him back into centre.
We're laughing at Flex. We're like 1 minute.
That's 1 minute on the dot. That's 1 minute.
Well done, Harriet.
Well done.
Manchester United, but not Eric Ten Hag's Manchester United.
No, we're looking at Mark Skinner's women's team, and under a little bit of pressure at the moment, actually. And after the game yesterday, was kind of asked about that, whether he felt secure in his job. They're sitting in 10 points. They're sitting in 10 points off the top spot. But I actually want to talk about Mary Earps because it's such an interesting situation that continues to drag on. They obviously lost Alessia Russo, star player, to Arsenal in the summer, and there was also a world record bid for a goalkeeper put in for Mary Earps. She obviously stayed on at Manchester United, but 6 months later, it still remains unclear, and she has just got 6 months left on her contract now, and she could leave at the end of the campaign for free, and United will want to be in a position where they absolutely avoid that. I mean, there has been a few reports that discussions have been open with PSG and Real Madrid, but Mary Earps herself said, I will say there is a lot of stuff that's been put out there that isn't true. So basically, Mark Skinner doesn't have a clue at the moment. He said, I sit here hopeful, but then 3 days ago he said, we're no closer to finding out whether she'll leave the club. So, I mean, a bit like the men's team, it just feels like a little bit of uncertainty going on at the moment on the women's side of things as well, both on and off the pitch.
Nabeed, everyone at home is asking, who is that club in the middle?
That is Al Hilal. I'm hearing apparently the Saudi League's finished. Jordan Henderson's left, the Saudi League's done. I'm saying it's not. Renan Lodi's just gone there from Marseille, played 14 times this season, only 25 years of age. I think he's got a long career ahead of him, still gets game time for Brazil. In his period at Atletico Madrid, a lot of people were speaking about him as one of the best left-backs in the world. Then goes to Forest, where I think he struggled a little bit, but that was at a period in Forest, brought in a lot of players. And because Flex ate up so much of our time, I'm going to win some of that time back and say I'm done.
Right.
Could have carried on another minute there, mate.
Harry, you've got some extra time now for Liverpool.
I don't know whether, is there a timer? Do we just kind of freestyle it? We're just going for it.
I'm in charge. We've had 3 minutes, we've had 3 clubs, so we're bang on time.
We're bang on time. Yeah, Liverpool's a bit of a funny one, a quiet January. They don't tend to do too much business in January unless an opportunity kind of presents itself. Diaz, Gakpo, kind of examples of that. But if we look at the situation now, the game at the weekend, you had Gomez playing in the left-back position. You had Conor Bradley, a youngster, playing in the right-back position. I do think it is those defensive reinforcements in the full-back positions in particular that should be a focus. Not so much left-back because Robertson and Tsimikas will come back into the team after injuries and they won't need a replacement there. But if the long-term plan is to shift Trent into that midfield position, then I do think they should be looking at a top-level right-back to slot in. And there was also a few rumours about Thiago Alcantara's future, not played this season, out for injury for so long. Hopefully, Jurgen Klopp keeps saying he'll be back soon, he'll be back soon. Those reports have quickly been squashed. But what will his future look like, maybe for the rest of the season, but also in the summer as well? There's a few key players whose contract situations need to be sorted out as well. Am I going on too long? Who knows? We'll end it there.
Only judging by Nabeed's little smile, I think.
What are you smiling at? There's a lot to talk about.
It's all right.
You'll have your chance. You'll have your time.
You've got just under a minute to talk Tottenham.
Cheers, guys. Spurs will be linked to Antonio Nusa, 18 years of age, very young, exciting talent playing at Club Bruges. I think Spurs fans currently are sort of like a lot of these players that they're getting. Previously, they were going after players we knew a lot about, and maybe you knew what was sort of coming. Whereas with Antonio Nusa, really, really high quality dribbler. He's been sort of like labelled as a Norwegian Neymar. That's not from me. That's from his ex-teammates. He's also said he's built his game on Neymar. He's a fabulous player in possession, absolutely electric. And when you look at him, I sort of watched him play. Obviously, not every single game, but I see a Premier League player there, and I think Spurs have done business very well under Ange Postecoglou.
You like making some mad comparisons, don't you? It's your...
That was his old teammates.
Dragosine was the new Van Dijk.
The new Van Dijk, exactly.
Also his teammates.
Right, okay,
selling point.
That was 5 in 5. Let's update you on a few other transfer stories. A number of Premier League clubs are interested in signing Arsenal's attacking midfielder Emile Smith-Rowe. We've been told the player is focused only on fighting for a place in Arsenal's starting 11, and unless, quote, something miraculous happens, he is not expected to leave. But Harriet, what's best for the player right now?
Game time, 23 years old. He came through with so much excitement, didn't he? And he had a really good kind of breakout season, that 21-22 campaign, scored 10 goals in that season. But since then, there's just been a large amount of frustrations with injuries and game time. Groin surgery restricted his involvement last season, suffered with a knee problem a bit this year. But even when he's fit, Mikel Arteta doesn't seem to start him, doesn't seem to have a heavy involvement in the side. Just one Premier League start so far this season. Arteta said he's settled at Arsenal. I mean, how much can you really read into that? He said, I'm really happy with Emile. He's on the right trajectory. He's training really well. What he needs now is chances to put all the desire and quality he has on the pitch. My question is he getting those chances at Arsenal? Not currently. Will he get them? I'm not so sure. So for me, I feel like at 23, game time for his progression is absolutely vital, and at Arsenal he's just not getting that. So a move away, and particularly if other Premier League clubs are interested, would be wise.
I do think at Arsenal currently, because they still have that midfield imbalance issue, Smith-Rowe is probably the most natural left-sided midfielder that they can bring in. He's the most natural in possession in terms of his technical qualities. The only problem he's got is in that position, Arteta demands players who win duels, and that's not really Smith-Rowe's game. I do think there's a player in there that in a couple of years Arsenal fans might look back and go, we probably should have kept him. But it's sort of the whole thing that Man City have done really well over these years is they've got a really high-quality squad and they rotate at just the right times to get the most out of each player. I don't know if Smith-Rowe will get that chance at Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah, why would Arsenal let him go? I mean, is he surplus to requirements?
From a financial perspective, 100% profit. Obviously, coming through the academy, like Saka did, like Reece Nelson did. If Arsenal were to make a sale of Emile Smith-Rowe, that would present itself in 100% profit for them, which would enable them to have more flexibility in the transfer market going forward. But in terms of, the footballing side of it, like Nabeed said, they need to be quite careful with this one because he does have potential. He's very comfortable on the ball, really technically gifted player. I like the look of him when he's on the ball, the way he can scan, the way he can pick up, positions in the half spaces and get on the half turn and drive at defences. A good way to pass. He looks like he can fit in to sort of traditional Arsenal side, but like you said, the physicality that's needed and the intensity that's demanded off Mikel Arteta maybe drops short of that. So I think Arsenal fans might be a little bit conflicted about this one. Some may say, listen, it's fine, it hasn't quite worked out, we can get that money, we can go and buy better. But obviously, I think as a fan of a club myself, where you like to see your players come through the academy and make it into the first team and be first team regulars, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Arsenal fans who also think that too. And Kai Havertz has come in, kind of playing off the front, can play in midfield, he's occupying that space. A lot of Arsenal fans have decided or discussing how impactful he's been, Kai Havertz. Leandro Trossard is getting a look in a lot of times off the left-hand side, or multifunctional cross midfield, or on the right-hand side. Reece Nelson's getting a couple more games here and there. So there's things for Arsenal fans to discuss about, but I think Emile Smith-Rowe will probably want to start going to play football soon, and that's going to be where Arsenal have to make a decision.
Well, Sheffield United are in talks with Spanish giants Atletico Madrid over a deal to sign their Croatian international goalkeeper, Ivo Gerbi. Chris Wilder is also looking to add a defender and is interested in a loan deal for Mason Holgate. Now, remember, Holgate is currently out on loan at Southampton from Everton, but Sheffield United would like to take over that loan. And talking of loans, Villarreal have agreed terms with Wolves to loan Gonzalo Guedes. His move is subject to a medical. And with Guedes going from Wolves, Nabeed, there was a lot of excitement when he signed. Why hasn't it worked out?
To be honest, I feel a bit sorry for him. He had that sort of like breakout season at Valencia, 21-22, where we finally saw the quality that he's got. Started 30 games, 17 goals and assists. His overall play was really good. Then Bruno Lage brings him to Wolves. He'd obviously worked with him at Benfica before, so the feeling was that this is a player the manager knows this is definitely going to work out. And at that time, if you think back to Wolves and the Bruno Lage, people were saying this team can compete for Europe. Then that went wrong. In comes Lopetegui, doesn't really fancy Gonzalo Guedes. He gets loaned out. Now Gary O'Neill's there again. doesn't really fancy him, and so he's loaned out again. It's one of those deals where I think a player's just got caught in transitional phases for managers and a team, and now he's sort of ended up heading to Villarreal in the hope that he can resurrect his career, which actually he's had to do before and kind of did it in 21-22. So I feel really sorry for him.
Right, news away from transfers and in particular in cricket, because Virat Kohli has withdrawn from the first 2 tests against England due to personal reasons. No Virat Kohli for those first 2 tests for England's tour of India. Right, on the way, we want you to get involved. The team have picked their best transfer 11 who've signed in January over the years. We're taking a look back at players who've signed on this day as well in previous years. So get involved with your best ever January transfers. Who should get into that first 11? Hashtag transfer talk. Welcome back. It's time for our Premier League selector, all right? We've kept Harriet away from the lever because she broke it last week. So we're going to do it automated. Right, roll please, lever to go and see which really... It's going to pick one club out of the 20 clubs in the Premier League. It's going to come up here and we're going to talk about that club with no notice. Right, Harriet, still broken for what you did last week.
It's just when I'm standing here, it's like when I'm in the area, it just curses it.
Producer, who should we go with? Crystal Palace. Harriet, No, Nabeed, I'll go to you for Crystal Palace.
Brutal, again. You just don't like me talking about the selected.
You've broken it twice. Two Mondays in a row you've broken the selected.
Save you. Let's talk about Crystal Palace.
Let's talk about Crystal Palace.
Roy Hodgson, he's having a bit of a torrid time at the moment. I think he did a brilliant job last season, sort of brought the club back to life after Patrick Vieira's stint. I think a lot of people felt Vieira was maybe a little bit harshly done by because obviously they had difficult fixtures. Then this season, I think Crystal Palace fans are now sort of saying, we want to move back in the Vieira direction. We want a manager who's forward-thinking. We want a manager who's going to change our style of play. So what do they need? I'd say a striker. They've only scored 22 goals this season. I think they miss a man in the middle who can put the ball in the back of the net. I think Mateta caused Liverpool some problems, but is very non-existent against Arsenal. I'd be tempted maybe to play potentially Eze through the middle, but again, you're sort of trying to find ways to fix a situation that could just be fixed by getting into the transfer market. And we spoke about Danny Ings earlier, and that is the club that I think Danny Ings should be looking at. I think it's a really good match.
Tough weekend for Roy Hodgson, wasn't it? Poor man just staring at that sign of him. He didn't know what to do. He just kind of stood and stared at it, didn't he? A bit difficult, yeah.
Are you in tomorrow, Harriet?
Am I in tomorrow? No.
No,
So don't you worry, the selector will work tomorrow. I won't be here to curse it.
Right, these three have been working very hard this morning, though, because they've picked their best transfer 11 from previous January transfer windows, OK? So we'll get this up here. We've gone for a 4-4-2 just to make it easy. We had to shoehorn in a few players slightly out of position, like Bruno Fernandes there. But in goal, we decided to go with Martin Dubravka when he signed for Newcastle under, I think it was Rafa Benitez. He's certainly been a good signing there. And although Flex, we could have had Kieran Trippier, another Newcastle signing at right back, but for something like 60 grand, we had to go Seamus Coleman.
What a servant Seamus Coleman's been at Everton. It feels like he's been there forever, which he basically has. And like you said, 40 grand, you know, not a lot in today's market as well. Even back then it wasn't. So a fantastic servant for Everton. And when you look across that back four as well, Van Dijk sneaking his way in there. I don't know how he's done that, but
I think he's
Sneaking his way.
going to have to look after them too.
Have you stuck a few players in here yourself, perhaps, Flex?
Just a joke, Harry. Just a joke. It's fantastic. You know, Vidic and Evra coming in January. I remember when Evra found it so tough for the first 6 months, and sort of was looking on saying, I don't know about this, and goes on to be a Manchester United legend, as does Vidic. And I'm sure you can talk about Virgil van Dijk.
I mean, it was a great Christmas present for the Liverpool fans, wasn't it? That iconic Christmas tree photo when he signed, and what a signing he has been. I feel like he was part of, you know, bringing in Alisson, him, and then all the other signings under Klopp were really that transformative talking point. When Van Dijk and Alisson came in, it was like everything started clicking, everything started working. And yeah, captain now this season, an incredible player who deserves his part in that team, I think, Flex. A couple of Liverpool names in there as well. Suarez, incredible signing in January.
Yeah, Nabeed wanted Jose Antonio Reyes in there, so we put him on the left wing with Suarez and Defoe up front. We might come back to this in transfer talk with Kevin Hatchard and see what he thinks of this team. He might add a few players in himself. But now it's time, as promised, for On This Day. So it's signings made on this day, 22nd of January, over the years. Right, Nabeed, who did you go for?
Wesley Sneijder went from Inter to Galatasaray, and typically when players go to Galatasaray or go to the Turkish division, people think it's like the end of their career, they're going for a holiday. He spent 4 years there, he won the league twice, he was instrumental in that team. And also when you think back to Wesley Sneijder, the footballer, he's one of those sort of like streets won't forget type players. Like immediately you think of the goals he scored, and he's just a fabulous footballer and a great character as well.
I think he's still linked to come to Man United as well.
Yeah.
Every single summer he was coming to Manchester United.
Right, Harriet, your choice next.
The infamous swap deal between Sanchez and Mkhitaryan. I mentioned this off air, and you were just instantly like, oh, what was going on there? But I think Sanchez was in the final year of his Arsenal contract. They wanted to get something from him. They didn't get a fee, so they decided on this swap deal. Didn't really work out for either party. Mkhitaryan peaked on his debut with 3 assists. Sanchez, it was like you had the stats ready. Flex gave me the stats, 45 games, 5 goals, 9 assists to United. Said he wanted to get a move away pretty much as soon as he got there. So, yeah, an infamous one, probably for the wrong reasons.
Flex, 20 seconds, go.
Yep, Stephen Warnock went for him. Could have got him in myself. He's just over there. I think I get him to come and stand here and say, what was you doing this time 16, 17
He didn't
years
know.
ago,
We
man?
did ask him. He didn't remember.
He didn't even know. Maybe it didn't happen.
He said it was his goal in the wind.
Next on the football show as well, so get into more with that.
Yeah, OK, so Stephen Warnock was Flex's choice there. Signings that happened on January the 22nd over the years. But as we've said, the football show is next with Stephen Warnock, Sue Smith and Rob Watton. Don't forget Ref Watch is at 11:30, and after that West Ham game away at Sheffield United, it could be a good one.